How are you?
Good afternoon, folks. How are you?
Good. How are you, John?
Doing good. I am very excited. This is our first Landscape Tree Preservation Board meeting, and I am only here to sort of moral support and support as your first meeting, but I'm going to just welcome all of you who have been appointed by Town Council to serve and turn it over to Patria St. John, who will essentially be your liaison from the Planning Department to the Landscape and Tree Preservation Board. So welcome, welcome. To you, Ms. Elizabeth, who's not present with us, thank you as well. And we'll get in contact soon, but I've met all of you, and I am excited that all of you will have signed up and are eager to get this thing rolling. So thank you.
Hello. We're going to start this. I'm Patria. I think I've introduced myself to everybody. We're going to start with a roll call. Do I really have to read out the names? Or? I see everybody here. Thank you. Hi, Elizabeth. What I would like to do is for everybody to introduce themselves and just give a brief explanation of why you wanted to serve on the board of landscape and tree preservation. And I'll start at the far end, Robert.
I'm Rob Ryan, resident of Kiowa, full-time now. I'm a landscape architect, still practicing professionally, and just thought it would be interesting and helpful to be involved in this type of board and the new activities that'll be associated with it.
Thank you.
I'm Denise Grable Donahoe. I'm a sustainable landscape designer. I've retired from my practice in the DC area and now living part-time here, but migrating more and more to spend more time here. I just wanted to offer my expertise in landscape standards and design and preservation, things that I've been taught and have picked up over the years.
I'm Greg Darris, permanent resident of the island and have been for 10 years. We've owned here for 20, so long time interest in what goes on in the island. And I was interested in being on this board because it has, it kind of has some foresight into some things that are going to go on this island as we look forward to some additional development and redevelopment of things.
I'm Melissa Yearden, or you can call me Missy. We've owned for the last 4 years, but as of a month ago, became permanent full-time residents. I think some of you may have read some of my emails. I'm very passionate about the environment. I care very much about Kiowa Island and preserving the integrity of the landscape, of our wildlife, of our maritime forests. And I do have I'm an attorney by trade, and I worked with clients also in the DC area in highly regulated industries, and I have a political science background as well. And so I did a lot of statutory regulatory work for them. And so I'm hoping that I can bring some of my skills and some of my passion to this board. Thank you.
Elizabeth?
I'm Elizabeth St. John, and we have been on the island either part-time or full-time for the last 13 years, about full-time for about the last 7 years, I think. And I share something in common with each of you. Either as a resident or as a passionate, follower of the environment. We started our low country journey in 1982 in Hilton Head. We loved Hilton Head. No, we started before then, excuse me. We started in 1973 in Hilton Head. My son was 3 years old. And you could leave the Hilton Head Inn, go walking, the lifeguards would take care of the 3-year-old. And there were 6 restaurants on the island, including McDonald's. It was called Restaurant. And now, Hilton Head's caved over and you can hardly distinguish it from any developed area like Gatlinburg or some other tourist area. So don't want that to happen in Kiowa, and I'm very, very encouraged by our restrictions and our regulations and the passion of the people who live there for nature. And so that is what I bring. I'm a business person. I don't have any, other than being passionate about plants and hiking a lot, and, hiking with those who are also very knowledgeable botanically. I don't have any skills like you all have, but I do have the interest.
Thank you. So with that, I'm going to go to, because we don't have a chair yet, I'm kind of administrating the meeting until we elect our officers. So I'm just going to go straight in and ask if anybody has a nomination for a chair for the board. Anybody want to volunteer?
How about you, Katria?
It has to be a board member.
Volunteer. Yeah.
Do I have a second?
Second?
I'll second Greg
Okay.
being nominated.
Anybody else? You guys are shy. That won't last long, I'm sure. Do you want to have a discussion? Do you want to, is there any discussion on the nominee for the chair?
I don't need to discuss it. I think Greg would be a good chair, so I would support that nomination.
Okay, so all in favor of Greg as your chair?
Aye.
Is Elizabeth?
Aye.
Aye, okay. Unanimous? So, do I have a nomination for a vice chair?
Robert. I nominate Robert.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Discussion? Okay, are we ready to vote?
Sure.
Okay, let's see it. Does anybody want to vote for Robert as a vice chair?
Aye.
Aye.
Is that unanimous, Robert?
Yes, sure.
Don't be shy.
I'm not sure what I'm doing, but yeah, that sounds good.
Okay, so in the rules of procedure, which we haven't adopted yet, it states that the secretary will be John or his designee, which would be me. But for administrative, we'd like to go ahead and get a nomination and a vote on that if we could. So anybody want to nominate me?
Nominate you, Andrea.
Second.
Okay. And a vote, please?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Okay, that part of the business is taken care of. Now, we're going to go over the rules of procedure. We had sent them out. I don't know if I did a little bit of last minute edit of just catching some initials and kind of making sure it goes by Landscape and Tree Preservation Board, which is how it was written in the ordinance. Really nothing else. But actually, Greg, you're the chair. I'll let you take this over. You want to just, yeah. We'll just, you can ask
Okay.
for the review and of the rules of procedure, and if anybody has any questions and if there's any concerns.
Okay. We have them in front of us, although I haven't figured out how to switch pages, but are there any comments?
I can switch. If there's an area that's anybody
Yeah. Because when I looked at it, a couple of things that you had changed caught some, the only things that I saw.
There was one thing on page 4, which you may have changed. I didn't go back and look at the revised one, but it was on item 13, it said less than 5 working days prior to a public hearing for the support, written submitted support or opposition. That didn't sound quite right.
I guess, does it say that we have the option to accept or reject? Because right now it's worded may accept.
Yes,
So I think the concern would be if we got this huge volume of information.
of last minute,
Yeah, at the last minute.
yes,
So.
yes.
Because the one before that said at least 5 days prior, and this one says less than 5 days prior.
Yeah, if you want to accept it, you can vote to accept it if it's sent less than 5 days.
I have a question that any one of you might be able to answer, because I don't know. Board of Zoning Appeals, is it the same?
Yes, these rules are all set up on the Board of Zoning Appeals, which is also a quasi-judicial. That brings up one point I'll just bring up while we're talking about that. If you have an application before you, we will have a court reporter here and the town attorney will be here. Because this is just administrative today, we didn't have to go to that extent. But that's because any of your decisions, if they get appealed, they go to the circuit court, and it's based on the finding of fact developed in this hearing.
I do have a question about on page 3, under meetings, number 6. Says a member may disqualify her or himself from discussion and voting when any proponent or opponent of an application has sought to influence the vote in any form outside of the application process. May. Does that mean that, so it's he or she shall disclose that information to the Landscape Tree Preservation Board, that's in number 5. Do the rest of the board members have any say in, let's say, for example, it was kind of an egregious, confrontation, and it's revealed to us, is it up to the board member themselves that they may recluse themselves, or? Because that's what it sounds like in number 6.
That's the way I read it.
Yes.
But that is, if that's something that you guys are interested in having a different standard, then we
Well,
can talk about
I'm
that.
just thinking, since we're establishing this for the foreseeable future, that maybe that's something that we would want to anticipate and discuss.
So one thing I'll add, and I think some of this will be good contextually as you consider making amendments to this rules, to the rules procedures for the Tree Preservation Board. Because it's quasi-judicial, meaning you are also can have sworn testimony to come in as evidence in part of your hearing for any decisions being made. There's a high burden for you all to keep that process integrity within this venue, meaning the board. So that influence of meeting with folks outside of the context of this meeting is perceived against the conduct of members of this body. So that, I think, is where this particular section 6 is kind of referencing. We are not recommending that you engage with anyone regarding an application outside of them being heard before you as a body. And so you may take site visits and view the property, that type of thing. But as far as engaging with an applicant, that should occur in this particular venue so that all witnesses can be part of the official record. As Patria stated, your decision would be compelled to be, if appealed, would not go before planning commission or town council. That would go through the circuit court. So if the question is, you guys want to modify the procedure and how you interact with the public.
No, I was
or-
thinking of more, maybe the board should have a vote. Maybe the disclosure should be made, and then it shouldn't be up to the individual board member, but maybe the entire board to assess whether or not that, I guess, that approach to that particular board member by the applicant in some way influences that board member that they should perhaps disqualify themselves, but they're not making the decision to disqualify themselves.
The one unique thing is that we have not had our formal training yet. That's by the state municipal association and your requirements as a planning official. In that, there is due process and those requirements, but there's also sort of a component of their sort of integrity as a board member. So, and what I would say, conflicts of interest, those types of things, those would be at the time that you present that before the meeting. So if you knew that you had a conflict of interest, or similarly, you had an engagement with a particular person on site, it would be up to you. And the process typically with the Board of Zoning Appeals is that they would notify staff, and if there's something of questionable, we'll ask our attorney to say, hey, is this something that's the whole board needs to be notified about? That way it doesn't jeopardize the case. I think I understand where
I'm
you're
just
coming
putting
from,
my
but-
legal hat on and saying,
Yeah.
if it's
And-
not codified, their
Yeah,
arguments
instead
could
of
be
inviting the entire board,
made
there-
for and
and-
against,
instead
yeah.
of inviting the entire board, there might be situations where it just needs to be mediated one-on-one with the attorney, and then he would give us clearance, he or she may give us clearance to say, hey, this is something you could sit in and render a decision and not be impacted. So I think I hear you.
The way I read the two together was that you're going to, if somebody approaches us, it could be so innocuous as a statement, and us then disclosing that to the rest of this group, and the person that was approached within their own determination, is it risking their ability to be fair and impartial? To me, I don't know that if somebody approaches any one of us, I don't know that I want to, as a board member, want to be the person voting whether or not you can be impartial or not impartial to whoever was approached. That's the part that I get a little bit squishy on.
And I think having the ability to talk to the town attorney if you feel uncomfortable, and the attorney kind of figuring out, yeah, that was okay, that's innocuous and it doesn't, then I think that gives you the flexibility to kind of account for different scenarios in that capacity. If we find, so at any time, if we find this is an issue, we can always come back and amend the rules of procedure. In fact, BZA has just been going through a process to amend theirs.
And if they're amending it, are they looking at it from the perspective of the person that was approached shall remove themselves if they feel?
BZA is not looking at that particular,
Oh,
I
okay.
just mean in general, they've gone through the rules of procedure and tried to clean up some things in terms of Zoom meetings or, qualifications in terms of full-time resident, or that kind of thing. They haven't really had an issue that they felt they needed to address that with.
I do have a question. It kind of gets back to this whole temporal sequencing, to use an epidemiologic term. At what stage in the process will we be informed that something is being elevated to the board level? I mean, will we be informed of issues that you are dealing with at the town or the ARB level, so that we know that it might be rising to the board level?
Yes, we can. We can definitely include a report for, every meeting we have, or just like I kind of, after our landscape work group sent out kind of bullet points, I can kind of keep you appraised of, like I was just telling Missy, that I was asked by the resort to go look at a tree on the golf course. And it was very easy for me to see that it was leaning, diseased, and it was okay to approve it per our ordinance administratively without coming to the board. So I can keep you guys kind of up to speed on those kind of things so you know. And if there is one that's coming, right now, because single family is exempt, the majority of work going on the island is single family. The multifamily is already in process of being reviewed, so this will not be applicable to those that are in the process. So that's why we didn't set a monthly meeting. I just don't think we're going to have the agenda. So when I hear that we're going to have one, there's going to be 30 days notice anyway in terms of being able to set a meeting date. And then once it starts coming, like when we get the draft for the landscape standards, that's going to come before you guys. So that's part of why I'm trying to keep you in the loop, whether you attend or not, just in terms of the bullets of what we're talking about. So I'm happy to keep you in the loop on those kinds of things. And did you want to address the 5-day?
Yeah.
Did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
I wanted to just, while I'm reminded regarding your question of the materials being submitted less than 5 days. So right now, the Board of Zoning Appeals in their practice and then within the rules of procedure have followed sort of a structure of when we notify property owners of a public hearing, that public hearing is noticed and it might be sent to a property owner who's not local, might be New York, elsewhere. And so historically, we typically get responses of that response going down to their design team, to the architect, and after, 2 weeks have kind of gone by, and within that week, we're receiving the actual commentary after they have been informed about the actual case and learning the details. And so you would already have the principal materials well before the 5 days. You would have your principal materials. Those are more so any sort of supplementary documents that a public neighbor might have submitted a couple of days before the meeting. So that gives you that discretion if you guys want to not enter that as part of the record. What the BZA has done is taken the same approach. If that letter was someone who had just walked in and wanted to speak verbally. So they've sort of equated a letter coming in 2 days before as sort of someone who's attending the meeting verbally to expressing their same sentiments or comments for the record. I don't know if that helps.
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Were there any other, I can kind of go, was there any other thoughts or concerns?
I just was curious what the mandatory training is.
So that is by state law,
Yeah.
that all planning and zoning volunteers and staff have to take a 6-hour orientation unless you have a master's degree in planning or an AICP or are an attorney. We have 2 attorneys, so you guys aren't required to do it. I was going to suggest that we not do it all at once because 6 hours is a little eyes roll back into your head kind of, but maybe break it into 2 sessions, 3 hours and 3 hours. And I'm going to send out kind of a survey in terms of availability. And it has to be done just within the first year. Subsequent to that, every year there's a 3-hour continuing ed requirement, and those have to be approved through the South Carolina Planning Education Advisory Committee. There's a committee that, and we try to make those more specific to Kiowa, more specific to Kiowa's issues, that kind of thing, for the continuing ed. So that's what it is. And it's really, it's a series of videos that have been put out. The state statute requires that it explains kind of the Enabling Act, what the roles are in terms of planning, zoning, BZA, review boards such as yours, that kind of stuff.
And I didn't bring a written
Where do you, I
printed
can,
copy. But I thought I had read about voting, that you had to be in person to vote?
yeah, it's under meetings.
Okay,
And it's a little strange. It says you have to be in person unless, because of circumstances, you can be via Zoom.
okay, so
You can be
you
via
can be
Zoom.
via Zoom and vote?
Yeah.
That was the question,
Yeah.
okay.
I think it's under meeting somewhere. Was there any other?
Sherry, I just saw a few minor typos, like under officers on number 2. I don't know if you corrected them yesterday. I have the biggest
If you
copy.
want to just give it to me, I'll make note of those. I'm hoping.
Very minor.
I started doing LTBB everywhere, and I thought I caught all of them, but possibly not. So if everybody feels comfortable, or if you want any further discussion or questions, if not, the chair may entertain a motion.
A motion to adopt? Anybody?
A second.
I move second.
Wait, who was first?
I think
Robert?
Robert moved and
Okay.
Melissa seconded. All right, all in favor? Aye.
Elizabeth?
Aye.
Thank you. Sorry. Okay. So that's our agenda. I'll open it up to questions, point of discussion, I'm kind of taking your role, sorry.
Trey, I have some questions I shot them over to you this morning, and some we have discussed. Actually, do we have a definition of specimen tree?
Yes. Have you had a chance to look at the ordinance that establishes the board? So the definition of specimen tree is in the ordinance, and it includes grand trees, which are any tree greater than 24 inches DBH or greater, and live oak trees with a diameter breast height 16 inches or greater.
Well, there are no exceptions for a specific type of them.
The type of them? Well, it says any tree. So a grand tree, any tree
Okay.
greater than 24 inches.
Okay. What happens when there's a violation of the permitted application? What kind of enforcement is there? What kind
Right.
of penalty is there?
Right.
Where does that go at that
It's-
point?
That is also in the ordinance. Under Landscape and Tree Preservation Board, it gives this board that authority. And it includes the ability to inspect, to cite violations, and to issue fines. So the fines currently are $1,000, $1,080 per tree. Not quite sure how they got that. And then also to mitigate any tree that's illegally taken down.
Well, to replace,
Excuse me?
the cost of replacement, as well as the fine?
Yes, you
Yeah.
can mitigate. When you mitigate, so there's provisions in the ordinance about mitigating as well, based on size of tree and whether it's in the building area or in the buffer area.
Okay.
The
If you don't mind,
ordinance-
would you put that ordinance back, out to me, because for some reason I don't have that in front of me.
I'll be happy to.
Then I have another question. In training, so the training is really not for our tree knowledge, it is more for administrative, knowledge, right?
Yeah, the mandatory orientation training is really to provide an understanding of the Planning Enabling Act and what they see the role of the board is and how the board acts with the other governing kind of entities as part of the municipality. Now, when we do the continuing ed training, we can probably make it a little more contextual.
Yeah, I think it's always very inspirational to see what other communities deal with and how they handle it, you know, in terms of their trees, in terms of their, the threats of development or whatever else they're going through, storms, whatever we go through. So I was hoping we could add some of that, you know, some of that kind of education into our training. Just a thought.
I think it's a valid point. And so all the mandatory training, we have to get approved, but that doesn't mean we can't share information that we're learning. And I'm a firm believer we don't have to reinvent the wheel. When in our landscape work group, we're looking at various communities and different approaches and how they do things, especially coastal communities. So I think the context, like you said, is very important.
And for members who might not be familiar with reading a plan, a landscape plan,
Right.
I mean, those of us can share our knowledge, but that might be helpful too.
Yeah. I can give my landscape design 101.
There you go.
Yeah, sounds good.
Anything else, Elizabeth?
No, thank you so much.
Anyone else? Board, Chair, would you like to?
I don't have anything. I actually do. I think you may have already answered, but I just want to make sure. Right now, you guys aren't aware of any multifamily or commercial that's on the drawing boards that's going to have to come to us in the near future?
I'm not aware of any, we haven't had any site plan reviews for anything like that since the ordinance was enacted. There will be, we know that the resort has properties they're going to be looking at doing. There are additional properties that will need to come before the board, so. But are you?
No, everything that's been in already is sort of either under construction or well through the permitting process. We anticipated the resort to have something by now, but they moved on an independent time clock. So we don't anticipate anything specifically. Those are really the large tracts of land that I can think of now. And West sits outside of the county, so that would be unless that property was annexed into the town, that would be something to consider.
What about the property that I think is referred to as the church on the upper end of Beachwalker? Is that already in planning?
So the two Beachwalker projects, that's part of the upper Beachwalker, the west end, in which probably should be.
Yeah.
Just for those who may be listening, so the Beachwalker projects, you might be familiar, there's two. One is the West End. That includes the church parcel, so that and parcel 11, which those parcels sit across from Riverview and adjacent to the Kika headquarters office. The parcels to the north of that, adjacent to the general store, those are not part of that particular development plan. So if there are proposed plans that would come for that site, those potentially would come before this board.
North of the
So
Kika
the
property?
current office parking, if you are familiar with the former office lot, the former.
Oh, where the trailers
where
were?
the trailers were.
Northwest?
Yeah, so that particular lot, we haven't seen any specific plans, but if you all recall, there's been discussions of potential plan development for that site for a number of months or better. Trying to think what other particular properties.
Ocean Pines is already well under
Yeah,
review.
Ocean Pines is already in MUSC. Night Heron Park, those are all in the permitting already. Which one was that? Okay, yeah.
Okay, thanks. Anything else?
No?
This is a lively bunch.
Well, there's no application, so this is, it's administrative. It gives us a chance to meet,
There you go.
yeah. So would you like to adjourn?
And
I move to adjourn.
second, anybody?
Second.
Vote?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, we're adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Nice to meet you.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you, Elizabeth.
Elizabeth, thank you.
Thank you.